an author and speaker who has written 4 books and been a guest on the Oprah Winfrey Show twice already. He's done amazing things since then with his amazing story of dying and going to hell and being rescued by Jesus himself. Welcome to the show, and none other than Howard Storm. How are you, Howard?
Very good, Brant. Good to see you.
Good to see you. When I first saw your story on Oprah, I was just so moved and touched. It was amazing. And your heart and all the things you've done since then. We're going to go into your backstory, Howard. So glad that you're on the show today. But before we do that, the name of your latest book is?
Befriend God, Life with Jesus.
Wow. And where can people find these books? That
Amazon, we'll have on Amazon.
Amazon.com.
And the good news for the buyer is that you can buy a used copy for a couple bucks.
Hey, can't beat that, right? No. Now, Howard, you've got a good voice. You could do audiobooks if you want.
Yeah, a publisher made an audiobook of my first book, My Descent into Death. But I've been doing I did a YouTube of Befriend God, Life with Jesus, but I didn't read the book. Well, I talked for 40 minutes on each chapter. There are 20 chapters, and so it's about 23 YouTube clips that kind of summarizes the whole book if someone wants to hear it rather than read it. But that book is about Jesus. It's not about my experience at all.
Wow. Well, I can't wait to hear about each and every one of those. Your first book was My Descent into Death, and the story behind that goes as follows. Tell us your story, Howard.
Well, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version first, and then we can, if you want to talk about anything, in more depth, we can go into that. I was an atheist, 38-year-old college professor, diehard materialist. I believe science had all the answers, and as science progressed, we would know everything. Bottom line was, me and all of my university professor friends were all atheists, and the good news was it made yourself the center of the universe. You decide what was true and what wasn't true. You decided what was moral, what you could get away with and what you couldn't get away with. And we were, of course, very kind to ourselves. So we had very permissive morality, as long as you didn't get caught, it was probably okay, if you catch my drift.
Oh, yeah.
And the bad news was, you were born this biological creature. You lived your, silly little life, your futile little life, which had ultimately no purpose other than possibly to procreate so that another generation could live their useless little life. And then you died, and, there was no other significance to us being here. And that thinking that we actually had a purpose, or that there was a purpose in the universe, or that there was some kind of intelligence, which some would call God. Now that's all delusional. We did away with that stuff in the Enlightenment 300 years ago, and we all know all that stuff is superstition and mythology. So we were openly Christ bashers, God bashers, and proud of it. And I can't tell you how ashamed I am of that, but unbelievably, God, Jesus, is very, very forgiving, even when we absolutely don't deserve it.
Right. Right. Yes, he is.
So that was my background. So 1985, 38-year-old college professor, tenured department head, having success, a little success in my profession, taking a group of students around Europe on an art tour, 3-week art tour. Lots of museums, galleries, architectural sites. Been to Sweden, Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, and now spending our last week in Paris. And it's the very last day of the trip. The next day, we're coming home to the U.S. And at 11 o'clock on this Saturday morning, June 1st, 1985, I had a perforation of the duodenum. Now, I'm in the hotel, 11 o'clock in the morning, talking to my wife, Sarah, and some students, and I'm talking to them about where we're going next. And next thing, I'm on the floor, screaming, kicking, thrashing, cussing, yelling, because I'm having the most acute pain that I've ever experienced in my life. And this is when a hole goes through your stomach lining, and all that good stuff that breaks the food down that you eat into digestible bits now enters into your abdominal cavity and starts digesting you. One of the big ingredients in that stuff is hydrochloric acid. You know, I'm sure people know that if you take a tooth and put it in a glass with your digestive juice, in the morning the tooth will be gone.
Wow.
I mean, the tooth won't be there anymore. It's powerful stuff.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, so my wife called the hotel desk. They called it emergency service. A doctor came, got me off the floor, examined me, and he knew immediately what was wrong and told me that I had to have a surgery now, immediately, or I would die, and then it had to be within an hour. Called an ambulance. They carried me out. I was not ambulatory, and took me across town to the big city hospital in Paris, big public hospital. Took me to emergency. 2 doctors there. They were very nice. Examined me, said the same thing that the doctor had said, and that I had to have surgery. And they made it really clear now, like right now, because what happens is you become septis. Another word for the infection. You become so infected that you can't recover. Yeah. Wow. And I mean, people don't appreciate that sepsis is a really big problem in hospitals. People die every day in hospitals all over from, that infection gets into your system and migrates around, and they can't stop it. So anyways, they sent me over to the surgical hospital, and because it was socialized medicine, I didn't know it, and I'm sure the people in emergency didn't know it, but there was no surgeon at the surgical hospital because It was a Saturday, and they worked Monday through Friday. So the deal was that they would call around and try and get somebody to come in. My wife and I didn't know anything about what was going on behind the scenes, because when we were taken to the surgical hospital, we were never signed in because there was no doctor to be our doctor to send us in. So we were technically not even there.
Right.
If that makes any sense. I mean, nobody in authority had admitted, we weren't admitted into the surgery. So
wow.
The pain, which caused me to yell and scream and thrash and think that my head was going to blow up from pain, that kind of pain.
Right.
Got worse and worse and worse because the stuff's migrating throughout my abdominal cavity. Instead of it just being an area, now it's my whole abdomen. And it was very, very difficult to breathe. And I knew with 100% certainty that when you die, it's like turning a light switch off,
Yeah.
The end. No more story. And that was scary because I was like 38 years old. I kept thinking, this can't be happening to me. I'm just hitting my stride here. I'm just getting all the stuff I worked for all my life. I'm just getting there, just on the verge of, being something. And this is impossible. It's makes no sense. And I was terrified of dying, and breathing was getting harder and harder, but I put all of my energy and all of my focus on breathe in, breathe out, breathe. That's all. 100% of my mind was breathe in, breathe out, because I had this bright idea that if I didn't do that, it was going to be over, you know?
Wow. Wow.
So that was what would keep me going. And this started at 11 o'clock in the morning. 8:30 that night. Every doctor I've talked to in the U.S. said I should have died within a couple hours.
Wow.
And then, I mean, all doctors tell me all the time, boy, it's a miracle you're alive. You know, we don't know how you did that. Well, I know how I did it. I was terrified. I did it out of pure 100% fear of dying. You know, I didn't want to let go. And nurse came in at 8:30 that night and said, we're very sorry we have not been able to get a doctor, and we will try and get one the next day, Sunday.
Wow. In the midst of all this pain, did they give you any type of medication for relief?
No, because I mean, I begged and begged and begged for it, and they said they can't without doctor's orders.
No doctor, no surgeon at the surgery center in Paris.
Mm-hmm. So when she said that, not literally, but figuratively, it was like ready, aim, fire. Wow. You know, I mean, when she said, we'll try and get one tomorrow, I mean, I couldn't, I've been hanging on, I mean, you know, I've been hanging on the cliff, you know, and now I'm just hanging on by one or two fingers on the edge, you know, like trying to hang on. And I was like, it's over, it's done. And so I told my wife to tell my parents that I loved them, and my sisters, and tell my friends and my kids, and told my wife I loved her. And she collapsed into the chair next to the bed, like crying like I'd never seen anybody in my life cry, because I mean, she knew this was it. And it was hard on her because, you know, the whole day, just watching me just go downhill, down, you know, I was in real bad shape. And I went unconscious. I don't know how long I was unconscious, of course. And I awoke, and I was standing up next to the bed, and I felt better than I'd ever felt my whole life.
Wow.
And I was happy. You know, like I'm all better. It's great. You know? Yeah. And
relief.
I was like checking out myself first, and I realized that I wasn't just better. I could see better, taste better, touch better, hear better, you know, feel better. It was like everything was heightened. All my senses were heightened. It's like, this is crazy wonderful, you know? So I tried to talk to my wife, and she totally unresponsive to me, as if I wasn't there. It made me really angry, because I thought she was doing her silent treatment on me, which was part of her arsenal of weapons, you know, the skilled silent treatment. I imagine a few men might relate to this. And then I noticed what was between her and me was there was the bed, and the sheet was pulled all the way up to the chin of the person in the bed, who was turned away from me but looking at her. And so I bent over and looked at his face, and to my absolute horror, it looked just like me.
It was you.
But I'm a rational human being, and I know you can't be standing over yourself, looking at yourself. You know, I mean, you can only see yourself in a mirror, but you can't be like, there aren't two of us, except now there were two of me. The other thing that was confusing and terrifying, I knew that the thing in the bed was just a slab of meat.
Wow. And
that was very hard for me to deal with, because I'm not dead. I'm better than I've ever been in my whole life. You know,
great.
I'm great. So I'm like confused. I'm angry. I'm like, you know, really frustrated. I don't know what's going on. The room's bright and lit. like I said, this was happening around 8:30 that night. And the hallway was dark. And there were people outside the hallway calling me by name in English, which was very surprising and weird because in the French hospital, they spoke French.
Right.
So here these people are English speaking, calling me by name. And I said, I'm sick. I need a doctor. I'm supposed to see a doctor. I've been waiting a long time. And they said, we know all about you. We've been waiting for you a long time. It's time for you to go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. And I understood that to mean they were going to take me to a doctor because I told them that I needed a doctor. And they said, yeah, we know all about you, waiting for you. So they never actually said. So I left the room and I had a bad feeling about leaving the room, but the room was not so good because there's that awful dead thing in the room, you know. Wow. And then there was my wife who wouldn't, deal with me and stuff. So I went with them and they circled around me and led me down this hall. And we walked for a very, very long journey. But throughout this whole experience, I was very acutely aware that I'd lost all sense of time. And so, the journey was miles and miles and miles. And as we went, it got increasingly dark. It felt increasingly humid and the atmosphere felt increasingly close. Wow. But the bad part was that the people that were around me, the more and more of them kept joining our group, and they were getting increasingly ugly. At first, they were just kind of rude, but now people were saying stuff amongst them that was frightening.
Wow.
Like things like, I really like his butt. That's going to be a lot of fun. Whoa. Stuff like that. And I'm like, this is making me feel real paranoid. Like,
Not what you want to hear.
No, it's not good. So I says to him, we're in complete darkness now, and there's a lot of them around me. And I said, I'm not going any further. I'm done. I'm going back, which was a bluff because I had no idea in this darkness which way was what, but I just wanted to get away from it. Right. And they said, no, you've got further to go. And so they started to push and pull at me. And I had played football in high school and stuff, so I knew how to fight. So I was punching and kicking, and they were punching and kicking, and there were a lot of them. And I don't want to disillusion any of you moviegoers, but when there's one person in a mob, the one person doesn't have a chance. So the punching and the kicking and the pulling degenerated into them clawing and tearing and biting, and that degenerated into them actually being invasive into my body. And I put it in that terminology because I don't really want to talk about that part at all.
Wow.
But these were people, they weren't demons, but what they were looking for was they got some kind of gratification out of my pain. In other words, the way I see it is that they were initiating me into their world, which was a world of domination and torment and pain. And so I was just, like people, when the new fish goes into prison, they get initiated into the prison world. Well, I was the new fish in their prison, and I was just being initiated. It wasn't, it wasn't anything personal. It was just like, that's how they greet everyone, welcome to our world. And I'm not authority on that world. I just experienced what I experienced, but I wouldn't wish that upon anyone in the whole wide world. And I also know it can be, because they wanted to take me deeper and I never got there. And I'll go into that right now, but it can get a lot worse too, a whole lot worse. And anyhow, so I'm lying on the ground of that place. I'm all ripped up. I can't respond anymore. They've kind of lost interest in me, and I hear an audible voice say, "Pray to God." And I think to myself, I don't believe in God. I don't pray. And the voice said, "Pray to God." And I think, even if I wanted to, I couldn't, because I don't even know how you do that anymore. I don't remember that stuff, because I had quit all that stuff around 15 years old. And the voice said, real strong and loud and clear, "Pray to God." So I'm thinking, okay, when I was a kid and I went to church and went to Sunday school and stuff like that, what were those? And I'm trying to think of stuff, and I'm remembering all the stuff that I'd memorized, like the Pledge of Allegiance and some Shakespeare and Gettysburg Address and all this stuff. And finally I come up with two phrases: "The Lord is my shepherd, and yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death." A couple things like that. And so I say those things, just those phrases. And the people around me freak out. They go bananas. And whoever is seeing or hearing this, I'd like them to remember, evil does not like the mention of God. They really don't like it. I mean, it's like throwing boiling oil on them. And that's the response that I got. And they were screaming at me in very obscene language. There is no God. Nobody can hear you. And if you don't stop immediately, we're going to do much worse things to you.
Wow.
But I also noticed that despite their claims and threats, that they kept backing off and backing off and backing off in the darkness. I couldn't see that, but I could hear them, moving away, because so I'm talking about God, but nothing to be proud of, because I'm just making up all this stuff about God, like, wow, God's going to kick you and stuff like that, I mean, I'm using God as a club, okay? Which, it's not pretty, it's not right, but it's not bad either.
Hey,
True. And so, because God can be a mighty warrior too.
Yes.
And so I find myself all alone in that place. And then I'm thinking, I went over my whole life and realized, like, why was I born? The big question that I ended up with was, what was the point of me going through? Because my life was like everybody else. So there was some good times and there was some bad times, and like all the fantasies that I had about how important I was, and I realized that was just my own imagination. I mean, none of that was true. Like,
wow.
When I leave the world, it's like a few people remember me for a little while, and then I'm just a big nothing. Why was I born? Why did I come to this planet? I couldn't have any answer at all, because I was not a particularly good husband or a father or a son or an artist or anything. I mean, it's just lots of flaws. And the horrible thing is that I've come into this world. Interestingly, I never felt that it was unjust. I never felt like, why did I come here? Somehow I felt like, well, that's what you get when you lived. And the people that had attacked me, I knew that they weren't any different than me. These were not like, Genghis Khan and Osama bin Laden and Adolf Hitler people. These were just regular old people.
Wow.
And they had
residents of hell, so to speak.
What?
Residents of hell, so to speak.
Yeah, they just they didn't believe anything other than themselves, so they got to go into a world where there was nothing but themselves.
Wow.
And The problem is that in that world, without any constraints, without any love, without any beauty, without any goodness, they just degenerated into this, world of domination and torment of each other. So anyways,
Wow.
I did not want to be there, but there was no way out. And I'm lying there sinking deeper and deeper into hopelessness and despair when my mind scrambling for something, and it comes up with me as a little boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old or something, in a Sunday school classroom singing Jesus Loves Me. And I could see it vividly. I mean, I wasn't back there, but it was very, very vivid to me. But so vivid that I felt like what I'd felt when I was a little boy. And when I was a little boy, and I mean this because I'm just trying to be as honest as possible. When I was a little boy, I believed in this super nice guy by the name of Jesus. And he had a robe and a beard and long hair. And when the lions and tigers and bears would come out from the closet and come around my bed and stuff like that, I'd pray to him fervently to get them away, and he'd make them go away. When my sisters were mean to me and were beating on me, I'd pray to him and they'd stop. You know, he was my go-to guy when I was in trouble. And that was about as sophisticated as my theology was, you know. But you know what? Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Sometimes it's good to be childlike in our faith. Anyhow, so I called out to him. I didn't know whether he would. I didn't know if he was real. I didn't know if he cared, but I knew that he was the only hope I had. I mean, I'm down to one hope, something that I'd had as a child. This Jesus guy. So I called out to him. I said, "Jesus, please save me." And to my amazement, a light appeared in that darkness, and it got incredibly bright and came over me. And out of it, I saw emerge hands and arms that reached down and touched me. And when he touched me, all the gore and stuff just sort of dissolved away, and I was completely whole. But much more importantly, much more, he filled me with a love that I and everyone else that I know of that's ever had this kind of experience with Jesus. I mean, an experience. Love is inadequate to describe his love.